Hello, podcast listener. I want to play a game. The rules are simple. All you have to do is listen to America's most self-righteous podcast, The Pod People, without blowing your brains out. Live or die. Make your choice. I'm Eduardo Scalpel Hands.
Hey, Hefe. I'm Pig Saw. Bed sheets.
Yeah, baby. Hi, I'm Cleveland Mosier, and the pig mask stays on.
During socks.
During socks.
Well, we just got back from seeing Socks.
We did.
Yeah.
We're several weeks late on this one. We did finally get around to it. Saw movies have sort of interspersed the history of this podcast.
Yep.
Before he was a full-time host, Cleveland's very first guest episode, was our torture porn episode, episode 4.
Where we covered way too much material.
We covered way too many movies. Yes, we've been over that.
We've learned.
But
We've grown a lot.
We talked about the original Saw, and we also talked about Jigsaw, which had just come out at that time.
Yeah.
I just re-listened to that episode not long ago, and it was pretty funny listening to how defeated we all were talking about Jigsaw and how fucking boring and dismal that was.
I rewatched that recently.
I rewatched it a couple of years ago before Spiral came out. It still sucks.
This year, yeah. I rewatched it.
Still bad, right?
You still leave it defeated.
Well, and then, moving on a couple of years later, we got Spiral from the Book of Saw.
I do a number 2 with my rifle.
I do a number... That's right. I'm going to make it spin like a spiral. Do a number 2 with my rifle.
The most enduring thing about that movie is the 21 Savage song over the closing credits. I barely
it's
remember...
enduring for the right reasons, but I respect it.
I barely remember that movie, except it was bad.
There are a couple things I still think are okay about that film.
I mean, yeah, a couple of the traps I remember being fine.
I don't think that movie is all bad.
It's not, but it's definitely not good. And has been forgettable. And I think mostly because that was the franchise's attempt to move past Tobin Bell's John Kramer, Jigsaw. And they saw how that went. So they said, by God, he's still alive, barely, but we got a few more years with him. So here we go. We're going to make Saw 10, Saw X. We're going to wheel Tobin back out, and it's going to happen. And it did, and shockingly...
Lo and behold.
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
For a Saw movie?
Great, even, for a Saw film.
Let's be careful throwing the word great around.
I will
ready
say,
to. I'm hot.
It's
I'm coming in
pretty
hot.
funny that this movie is set between,
Saw 1 and 2.
1 and 2?
So it would be in
And-
about it would be like late 2001, early 2002.
Yeah. And,
Because lest we forget, the original Saw happened on September 10th, 2001, the day before 9/11.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you serious? I didn't... I never knew
There's a part in the movie where Cary Elwes picks up the little flip phone, the cell phone, and he looks at it, and it has the time and the date on it. And the date is September 10th, 2001.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So,
dear.
This movie takes place immediately post 9/11.
Wow.
This movie that we just watched, which makes certain aspects of it particularly funny to me, but we'll get to that later.
I just wanted to mention that because it's kind of funny that, they're wheeling Tobin Bell out because it's kind of a necessity, but at the same time in the series story, he dies at the end of 3.
Right.
So
Well,
they
I mean,
really have to find ways to shoehorn him in.
well, yeah, I mean, it gives it pretty severely limits the window within which they can tell his story. Like, if they're going to have him back, it has to be before the events of Saw 3 when he dies.
Yeah, and he does look a bit older than he did in the first
Of course. I mean, it's 20 years later.
Yeah.
Him, I think it's... I mean,
the reason why I think that works.
Him, I think it's a little bit more forgivable is probably the wrong
he's in the
word.
throes of chemo. He's going to be going back and forth in his health. Like, chemo physically ages you.
I mean, he's months away from death, and
that is a valid excuse. But at the same time, they also bring back Shawnee Smith,
well,
who looks much older.
That's the thing. I was gonna wait to get into that, but since here we are. I don't think I think it's important to clarify that I don't think this is a gendered thing. I think what it really is that there is a much bigger difference in appearance between 35 and 55 than there is between 60 and 80. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, obviously, Tobin Bell is 80 years old, and they don't have him doing anything physically strenuous in this movie. You know, he's hobbling around and you can see his age. But yeah, for his character, he's been on chemo. He's months away from death. Like, he never looked good in those early Saw movies either. It was more makeup then than it is now.
There's still a lot of makeup.
There's still a lot of makeup. It
really heavy under the eyes. I think it looked good.
He does look like an 80-year-old man. The problem is with Shawnee Smith, who is, you know, in her early 30s in those early Saw movies. Bring her back now, she's a woman in her mid-50s. It's much more apparent with her than it is with Tobin Bell.
I have to say it too. Like, I think the short haircut that she has in this movie doesn't do her any favors.
It doesn't, but she had short hair in Saw 2, so they had
but,
to. They didn't have a choice.
In Saw 1, she had long hair, and this is between 1 and 2, so you probably could get away with her having long hair.
Yeah,
and that would cover some of like the old age stuff a little bit.
I'm just for a Saw film, I ain't really all that worried about it.
I mean, I'm not
anything,
really.
It kind of makes it funnier, and
I'm not really
like why it works. It worked for me just fine.
Saying I'm worried about it is going too far, but it's one of those things where it's like, I mean, in so many ways, this movie is like a return to form, and they're wheeling out all of these characters that we haven't seen in, you know, a decade or more. So it's not one of those things where it's like, I think it's terrible, but it's like it's like, oh, she pulls the pig mask off and, oh, remember Amanda? But it's like, oh man, she looks old. Tobin Bell looks old in the fucking 1 or 2 shots he's in. Hoffman looks old. Like, it's like, here's all these characters you remember, but from 20 years ago.
Okay, I have a question for you guys. Now, there's no reality where this film had the budget for it. But would you prefer as is or with digital de-aging?
I mean, both are bad, but if they could get the digital de-aging from, like, The Irishman, then I'd say they should go with that.
Well, and that's the thing, like, Amanda doesn't really do much in this movie, so they could probably get away with digital de-aging.
Yeah, I mean,
more than if she's, like, actively doing a bunch of shit in the movie.
She has a pretty active presence in the latter half of the film.
She does.
Well, she's there a lot, but she doesn't, like, actively do a lot of it. Yeah, and that would make the digital de-aging a bit easier. At the same time, I agree with you that it doesn't really matter. I just wanted to kind of point it out because it's...
Well,
it's noticeable.
It's been happening a lot in the industry lately, too, anyway. The Indiana Jones film and The Irishman and, like, so many other movies where they've been, you know, like, really focusing on, like, de-aging or digital de-aging or just bringing them back, wheeling them back in. You know, Patrick Stewart, you know, in Star Trek and the rest, like, they're just they're just bringing back these old celebrities, you know, again and again. And
yeah, it's the nostalgia kick.
I gotta say, though, like, of all of those, off the dome, I'd rather have Tobin Bell back than
I mean, I agree.
Many of the other, like, celebrities.
He has always been the heart and soul of the franchise.
Yeah.
And
his voice still sounds dope.
And his absence in Spiral, you know, was gaping, I would say. So it's like, if they're gonna make more of these movies, it's like, yeah, use Tobin Bell while you got him, as long as he's willing to do it. And I think he is. I mean, that the series, like, is his career for the most part.
Well, I think too,
And I
like
think
the writing of this movie set him up for several dramatic layups that he's never had the opportunity to have in the Saw films.
Yeah, I want to get into that. Because this is, in most ways, like, very much a return to form for the franchise. To its fucking benefit, I must say.
Yes.
I must say.
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
there are a number... In so many ways, this movie, like, made me nostalgic for, like, the earlier Saw movies. And
Well, it's directed by Kevin Grudert, right? Who directed, like, 5 and 6 and wrote a lot of the sequels.
yeah, let's pull up his filmography. That was something that I had looked at before.
I know he directed a couple of them. And he wrote a couple of them.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is one of the things that I was worried about going into this movie, is who was handling it. Yeah, Kevin Grudert, the director, also did Saw 3D and Saw 6. The writers...
Which are the less good ones from the original batch, right?
Six is pretty fun. Saw 7 is one of the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
And then it
5
was
is all right.
this movie. Yeah, 5 is fine.
5 is fine.
None of these movies are very good, but
Compared to each other.
compared to each other, yeah. But this
Not
movie,
the breadth of cinema.
this movie was written by Josh Stolberg and Pete Goldfinger, who wrote Spiral. This movie, yeah.
Really?
Who wrote Spiral and Jigsaw. So I was
Wow.
going into this.
Didn't know that. Color me impressed.
There's
always a chance, right? People can bring it back.
You
around.
want to know what else they wrote?
Damn,
though?
what a redemption story, frankly.
Some of their other writing credits, despite those, Piranha 3D,
Hell yeah.
Y'all like that movie, right?
Fantastic
one of the best.
movie.
also Piranha 3 Double D, which I've not seen, but I know Ben says Sorority Row. I don't know if y'all ever saw that. That dog shit movie. Nothing else of note, some other TV stuff. But yeah, so going into this movie, like, obviously after Spiral and Jigsaw, like, my expectations were fucking rock bottom. I was like, no way this is going to be any good. Especially seeing, okay, it's directed by the guy who did 6 and 7 and written by the guys who wrote Spiral and Jigsaw. Like, there's no precedent for this being any good. And what we got was a return to form that is, I think, probably one of the best in the whole franchise.
I'm amazed. I'm amazed that in 2023 they can
get
make
one
a
of
Saw film where everyone involved in the process understood the assignment.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
from the writing, from the practicals to, like, all of the beats, like, it felt like a fucking Saw movie, and it delivered.
And
in all the
again,
ways
this
I
is
was-
all of this is contained within
Saw.
within the Saw franchise. We mustn't ever forget that. When we say that this is a pretty good Saw movie, we're
Good for
not.
Saw.
It's pretty damn good for Saw. It's not a great film.
See,
but
I think the secret sauce here is
the secret
it's-
sauce.
Yeah,
Sauce.
truly. It feels like the movie is truly a back to basics sort of thing.
Yes.
You know, it's probably the most linear Saw movie, and it's probably the least convoluted Saw movie.
But
And entirely self-contained.
Yes.
You can watch this movie pretty much without having seen any of the rest of the franchise, and for the most, like, you don't have the point of reference for who Amanda and Hoffman are. But other than that,
I don't need it.
this movie gives you everything. It is the least convoluted Saw film in the franchise.
And what I will say
crazy.
is when it does get convoluted with all the double crossing stuff, it's right in the vein of the franchise.
Yes.
It
Even
frankly
that
should be there.
is not convoluted compared to
compared to most of
It's
the
enough.
late,
It's
of the
enough
other
to be
sequels.
fun and be funny and work.
I will say there's part of me that misses like the galaxy brain, like stupid convoluted, ultra twists that some of those sequels have. I think it's charming how over the top some of those sequels get, but I really appreciate in this movie how it feels like everything is so well thought out.
Yeah,
you know?
well, I think I kind of agree with you to an extent about, like, the just, like, enormously stupid galaxy brain twists, but I think those are so contingent on context from, like, the rest of the fucking series. That's why, like, when you're getting into fucking, like, 5, 6, and 7, and you're seeing flashbacks from, like, 4 and 3 and 2 and just, like, all over the place, making this movie now, Saw 3D came out in 2011, I think, 2010, somewhere around there.
Yeah, that sounds
so it's
about right.
been over 10 years since that mainline series. So I think they were really actually quite smart about this, that it does not reference the rest of the series too much, because you can't expect audiences now to remember all of that insane deep lore. I've seen all of those movies like 6 or 7 times, and I don't remember all of the deep lore of those movies.
Yeah.
Like, you just can't expect audiences
it's nonsense,
to.
really.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you can't remember it, because it doesn't fucking make any sense. It's so fucking stupid.
Yeah, it's a house of cards. And, no, what really matters is the kills.
Yes.
Is the kills, and the fun deception game-playing stuff.
Yeah.
And, man, do we get that
The game,
in ample amounts.
Well, we finally do in the second half. That brings me to another point. Where this film does not feel like a return to form is in the first half, which I don't think is bad is bad or even boring, but it sure is long. There is like, especially for these movies, the amount of time that this movie goes without killing somebody in a ridiculous trap is maybe longer than any stretch of time in any of the other movies where somebody doesn't die.
They thankfully give us the eye trap, which is like our only sort of trap.
And that's not even real. That turns out to be just him imagining what he wants to do to that guy.
You know what I'll say, though? That shit was real to me.
Great.
Great.
I mean, it's a great first trap. It's a great setup.
Yeah.
It's referenced on the poster. The dude with, like, the weird tubes coming out of his eyes. Yeah, the poster is the tubes cross over and make the X. It's done in the old...
cute. Okay.
The traditional
with the
Saw
fingers
poster
and all the rest.
stuff.
Yeah, for all the kind of... Good.
And it's good poster. Yeah, and he has to, like, turn a dial to have a machine individually break each one of his fingers, because Jigsaw sees him stealing stuff out of a hospital patient's drawer by their bed. Sees him stealing,
and he wasn't omniscient.
watch.
He's just right there, and he
he just happens to be there, and so he has to break his fingers, or the tubes, they're attached to, like, a shop vac or something.
His eyeballs out.
Suck his eyeballs
Which is
out.
great, because he was a cleaner. Like, the guy's he's like cleaning the room.
He's a custodian.
Yeah, he's a custodian. So, like, you can see is John Kramer is watching the guy, like, steal from the invalid. You can see his thought process on making all of these themes
in the tape. Well, yeah, it's all so on the nose. It's also
as it should be.
As it should be. And and on the tape, he's like, I've had my eyes on you.
Yeah, the puns are back.
Yeah, and his penchant for the theatrical is there. Yeah, I mean, it's especially
like, you just get that shot of, like, the invalid's, like, fingers are, like, pulled on and his, like, feet are held by the stirrups with the steel wire. And then we see that he's using that same sort of steel wire contraption to break this dude's fingers. So, like, he's letting the world around him sort of influence his traps, like a Da Vinci almost. And, like, that's it, man. That's what it's about.
That's the Saw juice.
Yeah.
But see, after that, it becomes something very different for a very long time. Before we get into that,
I want to say about that trap, one of the things I appreciate about that trap, and going on to most of the rest of the traps in the movie, is unlike some of the later sequels, like, these traps feel winnable.
Yes.
They're
more they're simpler.
Yeah.
Simpler, clear goals. Yeah, like that one is like literally just turn the dial.
Yeah.
Breaks all your fingers, you're good.
He could have easily just turned it to 5 immediately.
He couldn't handle the pain. He couldn't get through it.
Yeah.
And that's how it works. Yes, we get the payoff as well. The film, I think, honestly, for, like, trap to trap to trap, how the payoffs work, how they don't, I think are pretty fucking great across the board. It's
all
to maximize that feeling.
And it's all very
Like, the tension is
classic. It's
great.
all very classic.
And creative.
Simple, creative, not convoluted, and relatively within the realm of believability for John to set this stuff up.
At least for Saw, right? Because, the reality is for pretty much every one of the traps in this franchise, a person's going to just pass out from shock well before they get...
Sure. I just mean in, like, him being able to build these things.
Yes.
Part of that believability, too.
Oh, yeah, I don't need that part. That was always fun to me. Like, I always like the idea of, like, this invalid building, like, this elaborate, endless series of traps. Like, where does the time come from? Who cares?
You don't need it, but what I'm saying is, like, that's part of, like, what's taking it back to basics, right? Yeah. A lot of the traps in this movie feel like the kind of traps that we see in, like, the first Saw movie. Yeah. A lot of them have that reverse bear trap kind of style, you know.
Or the overhead shotguns and the kind of stuff that you see in, like, his original lair. You know, he has like, the assassin blade in his arm and shit, and he makes that escape. Like, it's a sort of, or Saw 2, you know, where, like, Saw 2 has a lot of, like, really fun designs in his same lair with, like, your son's in a safe place room. Like, it goes back to that idea, like, he's an architect, he's an innovator, and they reinforce that in this movie, and always in fun ways.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I want to talk about the next big stretch. I'm going to try to breeze through it plot-wise.
It's pretty cut and dry.
It's pretty cut and dry. It's weirdly sentimental. And
I thought it was kind of silly.
I do too, and I kind of like it, and it sort of feels in a lot of ways like the franchise reflecting on itself. you got this movie, you have a lot of, like, John, like, it's very kind of sappy and emotional. This is like way more like character than we've ever gotten out of this character before. You know, way more.
When they do like a new Rambo or a new Rocky. I got a very similar value, like, you know, like Rocky Balboa. You know, they get to, like, oh, who is Rocky Balboa? You know,
yeah,
and, like, getting into that same. Now that he's old and they're wheeling him out again. They give it a more sentimental edge than it used to have.
Yeah, and like I said before, it's more linear than the other ones, where
totally.
Other Saw movies would just throw you into the traps and tell the story in flashbacks. We're getting the story part right at the beginning.
Very
so
linear,
once we get past it, we can be all traps all the time.
Oh, yeah.
So
which,
this,
has its benefit.
Yeah. So this whole next big section of the film, probably close to 40 minutes of the film, I would say. Huge section is sort of like setting up the impetus for the second half of the film, the game, right? And it's John Kramer reflecting on his impending death. He gets a tip from somebody that he was in, like, a cancer support group for, is like, I found this, like, radical new treatment. I'm completely cured, and I was, stage 4 terminal. But, these people have to hide. They have to do their work in secret because none of it's FDA approved, and the drug and pharmaceutical companies are going to come for them.
It's a cocktail of meds and surgery.
Yeah.
I love that. It's so dumb. It's perfectly done. It's as dumb as it should be.
Well,
it's great. It always leaves me laughing a little bit. I didn't think you could put that kind of intent into it and make it work, but they did.
Basically, he gets selected as a candidate for this experimental treatment, but he has to go to Mexico to get it because they can't operate anywhere else. He gets to Mexico, and there's a whole thing where he's in the cab, and the guy's driving around and pointing out all the parts of Mexico City. But, like, as he's driving around, they get ambushed by, like, these guys in a black van, and it's like, oh, he's gonna get kidnapped by the cartel. And they're like, what's your name? And John Kramer is like, don't lie to me or I'll kill you. He's like, no, really, my name is John Kramer. They're like, okay, we just had to make sure it was you. And they throw in
So, I love this fake out because everything I'd heard about this movie was, it's, John Kramer goes to Mexico and he gets, like, robbed or something and he has to do a vengeance thing. I thought they were going to do, like, a new, is it the new Rambo movie that does something like that, where, like, he goes after, like, a cartel gang or something silly?
Yeah.
I thought they were going to do something similar, and frankly, hearing that, I was a little nervous. Like, what? he's not an action hero. You know, how's that going to work?
That would actually be pretty funny. Jigsaw gets kidnapped by the fucking cartel.
But I think the direction they go in is so much more good stupid.
Well, yeah, it's the doctors or whatever. They're so secretive. They have to like make sure it's really him, and then they put him in the back of the van. They have to take him to like a secret location because nobody can know where we are.
So the abduction is a fake out, which is
the abduction is a fake out.
Entirely unnecessary. They could have just had someone say like, "Oh yeah, like put a hood on. We can't show you the location for our own safety." You would have done it anyway. Like, but instead, it's like they have to dramatically make it look like he's getting robbed and thrown into a van, but really, it's all right. It's perfect. Like, don't touch it.
Well, it's foreshadowing, isn't it?
It is.
Because, okay, so he gets to this, like, beautiful, like, old villa in the countryside, and there's, like, a factory out back, an old abandoned factory,
yeah.
And they have, like, a like, sort of pop-up clinic set up in there, and he meets all of these people. You know, the doctor walks in and is like, here, she even says, she's like, let me introduce you to the crew. And it's like, here, let me show you the people that Jigsaw is going to kill throughout the course of this movie. And, you know, we meet like the maid or whatever, Gabriella. She's very nice and sweet. She gives him a bottle of tequila for luck, even though he can't drink it prior to the surgery. It's like, oh, there's a groundskeeper who has like his son. The son becomes important later. It's like, oh, we've got the nurse and we've got the anesthesiologist here meeting all of these people. Oh, and here's one of our patients who's just finished up his treatment, and it's looking like a complete success, so it's going to be a success for you. He gets the surgery, the cocktails, wherever. They're like, you're good, you're cured. We're just going to leave you alone now, take a bunch of these drugs for the next week, and then the rest of your life can begin. And this part has one of the most deranged things in the movie that is also the funniest. Is like, you get this whole like little montage of John, like, you know, with his spirits bolstered, and he's like, oh, it's the first day of the rest of my life.
This is so
like,
good.
It's so crazy. And it's like, you know, he's walking around and he's like, he buys like a bottle of tequila that he's gonna give to Gabriella, and it's just like there's this sort of like whimsical piano music playing. We see him sitting in a park with kids playing in the background and laughing, and he's drawing in his sketchbook, and it hard cuts to what he's drawing in his sketchbook, and it's like it's the head twisting device from Saw 3 that twists the dude's whole head around. It's just like this like nice happy whimsical piano music, and just this like hard cut to him drawing this like fucking medieval device that he's gonna strap some poor motherfucker into. You know, it's so funny.
Deranged, and like
it's totally deranged.
The best part is then they have this even better moment where like once he's like kind of finishing up the illustration, he then looks up and he sees that he's in this bright sunny world, you know, and that maybe things are better, and he crumples up
he tears the
throws
page
it away as if
away.
like, oh yeah, Jigsaw, who's already murdered like,
he's like, you know what, I'm better than this.
Maybe I can just embrace not being an edgelord. Maybe I could just be good.
Lee Wanell's corpse is still moldering in that bathroom hundreds of miles away back in America, you know.
Amazing. Yeah, it was like, oh, maybe Jigsaw can come around. Like,
well, I mean, always.
I love how sympathetic this movie is to Jigsaw. It's so funny.
That's the thing.
Great.
One of the most baby brain things this franchise has always tried to do that, you know, like really got me as a teenager and stuff too, is Jigsaw as the anti-hero. That, like, you know, he's a killer, but he has good motivations. He wants to help people. He's helping people turn their lives around. He's giving them a second chance at life. He's actually like, he's this dark messiah that, you know, all of these people take on his mission and carry on his work even after he's dead. And this movie, maybe of all of them, pushes the like John Kramer as good guy thing like just so much.
The thing that it nails with that is it's such a juvenile sense of justice that he has, that it works
that
here.
the franchise is always portrayed as profound.
Yeah, it works here because the undercurrent is a sense of retribution and revenge.
Yeah.
Even if he doesn't admit it, like what he's doing in the second half of the movie is all due to revenge.
Totally revenge.
They really should have just named him John Karma.
And there and there are a couple of things. There are a couple of times where I think the movie does like try to question some of that. We'll get into that. But basically, after this, like, yeah, he buys the bottle of tequila, and he this is so again so fucking stupid. The way he figures out. He's like, I'm gonna go take this tequila back to Gabriella as a gift, but he doesn't know where the place is because they kept it secret. So we get a shot of him like sitting on like a terrace and like a cafe and looking like at the hills and seeing like the radio tower, which he could see from the villa too, and he's like sketching out like a map with like a protractor and getting like
using
the
his
angles.
architecture like
Yeah,
knowledge
it's like okay,
triangulate the location.
To triangulate, awesome. Yeah, based on like the same landmarks he can see.
He's so smart.
Yeah, he's so brilliant. The beautiful cancerous mind of John Kramer. He's so fucking smart, dude. He's so smart. He's always in control. No one ever gets it over on Jigsaw.
Nah.
Except, oh my god, he goes back to the villa and there's nobody there. And it's all trashed. And everything is gone, and he finds an old VHS tape of like an intro to neurosurgery 101 like instructional video, and he starts watching it, and like part of his surgery was it's like we're doing this like part awake so we can check like your motor skills to make sure we're not fucking anything up. So he's like partially conscious, and he sees like a reflection of the screen of like what he thinks is, you know, them operating on his brain, and he finds this tape and watches it, and it's the same footage. He's like, oh my god. And he pulls the bandage off of his head and picks up like a broken shard of glass and uses it to look in the mirror, and oh my god, he does not have a fucking he doesn't have a scar. They didn't cut it. They didn't
even shave any of his head.
They didn't even shave his head. That's crazy that he would get to that point before realizing that. Just over a year ago, like my dad had brain surgery to remove a tumor, and like that shit is like the recovery process for that shit is like agonizing. Like you can tell that they like carved into your skull. Like the fact that it took him days of having this bandage on his head and like never feeling a scar or pain or anything, and having get to that point and be like, oh my god, I don't have a scar. They didn't cut my skull open at all. I can't believe this. Then it's like, okay, now da 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 da. It's like now it's time for that old school Saw shit. And again, this part of the movie,
you know, the camera's like spinning around him, and like,
yeah,
oh, it's great.
I gotta make a few phone calls. It's like this part of the movie. All of this that we've just described pretty briefly is, again, like 45 minutes of the film. It's very slow. And I was, again, like none of it is, it's not handled particularly badly. It's straightforward. It's easy to follow, so on and so forth. But I was like, I was really ready for the Saw shit, right? Like especially after that first kill, I'm like, when is the Saw stuff gonna start happening? And then and then here he comes.
Yeah, well, the first person he captures is the cab driver. Mm-hmm. And the thing I love about that trap is it feels hastily thrown together.
Yes.
Like he has like actual rope that's tying the dude to like a chair.
He takes him to the factory. All of the games and stuff happen in that same factory.
And his hands are duct taped.
So he has scalpels duct tape in each hand, and he has like pipe bombs wired into the flesh of his forearms.
Which, I said it, you said it for your intro, and I also, Ben will confirm, I said it during the movie too. I leaned over to Ben and I said Eduardo Scissorhands.
It's Eduardo Scalpel Hands.
Yeah.
He is,
traditionally saw, like, it's not so over complex. Like, he's got scalpels duct taped to either hand and bombs strapped into his arms.
It's one of those things where it's like you start thinking about it too long. It's like, okay, he's in Mexico. Where did he get the materials to make these pipe bombs?
And
where did he get the timer readouts that are strapped to each one of them? It's like, so on and so forth. But considering how elaborate like a lot of the later sequels are, it's like, yeah, this all feels this all feels very simple, very straightforward. We're under the assumption, again, the beautiful cancerous mind of John Kramer. He's a genius. He's brilliant, right? He's MacGyver. All he needs is some scrap metal and some duct tape, and he can wire up some pipe bombs or whatever, right? But one thing that also surprised me: this dude gets out of his trap. He does. He successfully cuts the bombs off.
Kicks them away from himself.
Kicks them away from himself.
At the last second.
And, John comes down and puts down a first aid kit in front of him, even though his hands are still duct taped scalpels. He can't get into that first aid kit. He's just like, you're going to be fine. And we never see that dude again. And earmark that for later. But so then he has to get his contacts on the phone because he needs help, because he's gotta hunt down everybody who was a part of this twisted scam to steal $250,000 from him. So he gets Hoffman on the phone.
Yeah. Though that's not revealed until the end.
Well, yeah, he opens the phone and he says detective, and it's like, okay, anybody who has seen the rest of these movies, there's only one person he can be talking to.
It's funny, though, because they make that feel like a big reveal at the very end, but...
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
The big reveal is just that they actually got him.
Yeah.
Just kind of silly.
I will say...
They had announced that beforehand. There were articles being like...
Oh, I didn't see that.
Costas Mendiler will be reprising his role as Hoffman in Saw
I just
10.
expected that.
I mean, of course. But yeah, they do it as...
I would have been more surprised if they got Cary Elwes back. Like in Saw 7.
That'd be so funny.
No, he came back.
No.
He comes back in
And then in Saw, that's the big reveal at the end of Saw 7, is that he's been helping Jigsaw do all the surgical stuff for the entire franchise. Because cutting his foot off made him realize that Jigsaw was right. That's how it works, man. Again, the earmark on that for the dude who got away.
Considering Jigsaw got robbed, John got robbed in this movie, I was kind of surprised that they didn't steal his kidney or steal any of his organs. That would be
so funny if they stole his organs. That'd be so funny. Well, no, because he still needs to be able to.
He's in rough shape as is.
Right.
You can't put him in
he already
shape.
has terminal brain cancer. Yeah. That's why he's got to have his henchmen. And so he flies Amanda out to Mexico to kidnap all of the rest of these people, and we see who they really are. And it's like, oh my God, the nurse the one we thought was a nurse, she's a prostitute, and Gabriella, that nice maid who gave him the bottle of tequila for good luck, she's a drug addict. And the anesthesiologist, Mateo, he's just a fucking janitor at a vet's office.
Worse than that.
He's a drug dealer. He steals the dog morphine and sells it to drug addicts. Like Gabriella. And just setting up that all of these people, it's like, again, the just absolute fucking twisted sense of morality that this film has, largely overlooking that, or rather going out of its way to be these are bad people, but then really more reinforcing it's well, no, it's just showing that things like poverty and addiction will drive people to the point of desperation that they will prey on others to have money to feed their addictions or to feed their families or blah, 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 whatever.
But that's why John Kramer gives them a chance.
Of course, he gives them a chance.
A new lease on life.
Yeah, right, exactly. He's giving them an opportunity, to test their fortitude and their will to live, because that's what he's all about. He doesn't kill people. Mm-mm. John Kramer does not kill people. He's never killed anybody in his life ever. He's only strapped them into the torment nexus. He's only constructed the torment nexus and strapped them into that. He doesn't kill people. Guys? That's why Amanda failed her game, is because she was building unwinnable games that killed people. And John Kramer found that distasteful, because they don't kill people.
Except sometimes. When they make...
Except tons of people every movie. They kill so many people. Anybody who dies in one of these movies dies because of them. Because again, those people didn't construct the torment nexus and strap themselves into it.
Buddy Jans and I were joking. We were watching the Saw movies a while back, and she like how funny it would be to do parodies where Jigsaw fucks up, like, the tape unspools, or the machine just kind of like falls apart.
It's like, oh shit.
Oh wait, no, strap yourself back in. Oh fuck. That's not supposed to happen.
The puppet falls off the tricycle and
before he gets there and to deliver the tape.
And he's like running, runs into the room. He's like, close your eyes. He runs into the room, puts the puppet back up on the tricycle. It's like, keep him closed for another 10 seconds. So, with Amanda's help, Jigsaw, John kidnaps all of these people, and he gets the doctor, the evil doctor mastermind lady too, of course.
Which is great, because now we've had a kill or two where it's the one-offs.
Yeah.
Right. And then now we're getting the big room stuff where there's many people.
Setting up the game.
Yeah.
But even so, like, all of this still feels really classic, because it is like a multi-person game, but it's not like a fucking haunted house where they're going from room to room, from trap to trap. It's like they're all chained up in this warehouse, and John is, quote unquote, testing, in his verbiage, he's testing each of them one at a time with some different contraption and forcing the rest to watch. So, again, like all very straightforward. John and Amanda are present the whole time. This does feel like, for Jigsaw, it feels like a slapdash sort of pop-up operation. Because he's not on his home turf. He's in Mexico. But I do think it's funny, especially considering that this movie takes place no more than weeks after 9/11. The fact that they were able to get those pig masks and the puppet through customs out of the country. I'm just I was amusing myself in this movie by just
had to let that through.
Imagining Amanda, because Amanda would have brought all of it, right? Imagining Amanda going through security at the airport with just like this puppet, just like in a big case, and like going through like the old
while the Jigsaw killer is on the loose and everything.
Yeah, exactly. Everything.
God,
it's like, at this point, people would know the Jigsaw killer is, like, they have the pictures of the puppet and stuff. It's just like right after 9/11, like trying to fly to Mexico with this fucking big ass puppet and fucking pig mask, pigs with human hair.
That's so
it's
funny.
like, yeah,
that's the funniest thing.
I'm opening a haunted house in Mexico.
A hogted house.
A hogted house.
I'm imagining her driving instead.
Oh,
having
man,
it in the passenger seat, dressed up as a little kid.
That'd be so funny.
My son.
Yeah,
Billy.
That would be so. Maybe she did have to drive.
Yeah,
that would make more, but take much longer.
Yeah, it would.
And honestly, probably still not easy to cross that border post 9/11.
One thing about having them all in the room, something unusual that they do here is they very much show themselves to all the victims.
Yeah.
Immediately. You know, John and Amanda both are unmasked and walking around all over the place.
They see them long before they see the puppet.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
The puppet doesn't come on a TV immediately.
He doesn't even really need to be there, other than that this is a Saw movie, and they're like, well, we gotta have Billy the Puppet at some point,
I like that
right?
because, okay, so in most of the Saw scenarios, Jigsaw's omniscient. He sees them do an evil thing, and he puts them in the game.
Yeah.
Right? But in this specific circumstance, it's more personal. They fucked with him directly, and they fucked with a lot of other people. They've done something that he sees as beyond heinous.
They've scammed. Right? They've scammed 34 people.
Yeah. So for him,
dying people.
It's important that he shows up in front of him. So I kind of like that. I think
at the same time it's so silly because
he's revealed himself and he's going to get turned in.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing.
Well, yeah, it's like if any of them
options to live, quote unquote. But if they live, they know who
if
he
any
is.
of them die, all of them, before any of this began, they all knew his full name.
Yeah.
And probably his social security number as well. Like, he had to...
Medical information.
Right, exactly. They know who he is. So exactly, anybody who gets out of this can easily just go to the police. I guess presumably his thinking is that why would they go to the police? Because in explaining what happened, they would have to admit their own crimes. So maybe, you know, that's their silence. Well, actually, no. What am I talking about? John, of course, assumes that anybody who survives one of his games, their life is changed irreparably, and they will thank him for it.
Yeah, and
so that's
for him.
Yeah, likely. Right. Become one of his flunkies, because that's what happens to everybody else who survives one of his games. But yeah, that's his actual thinking, is that, oh, well, if they survive, they'll be changed for the good. They will thank me for what I did to them. Yeah, some kills. This is where we get some really great Saw kills.
Great Saw kills.
So the first one is the girl, the
prostitute.
Yeah, the prostitute
who was playing the nurse.
Yeah,
the nurse.
And her trap is cool. It's one of those traps where it feels like one of the later sequel traps where it doesn't necessarily feel winnable completely.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's sort of been the case since the beginning of the franchise. Like, his early shit doesn't particularly feel winnable either.
I want to say, of all the traps in this movie, and largely across the franchise too, I think this one might be one of the traps that had me the most squeamish. I think that is cut the best. I think it's edited really, really well. I think the practicals are galling to look at in all the right ways. I mean, mad props. I think that, and again, it's simple, it's clean.
It has all of the hallmarks of a good, to use the word to death, classic Saw trap.
I will also say, I think it's also one of the most bullshit, because she did everything she could.
I was going to say, there are a couple of people who die in this.
Brain 1, 2, they do everything.
Who really die due to the failure of machinery.
Well, and like multiple traps kind of fall into the same kind of.
It works great for the pacing, so I don't really
the victims having to sacrifice so much of their body into, you know, a receptacle.
Yeah.
For it to free them.
Yeah, so this one, she has to use like a wire cutter, basically, to saw her own leg off, and use like a little suction thing to extract 3 ounces of bone marrow from her femur into this thing that it weighs it. Once it gets that, she'll be free. Otherwise, wire cutter will cut her head off.
And it's worth noting that the wire he gives her to cut off her leg is a specifically designed wire for medical use, like wire cutting method for medicine. And for each of the other kills, for the people who are faking being in the medical field, they also operate as this ironic instruction in medicine.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, here's a lesson in this thing that you were faking. I know this field better than you do. And it's so cheeky, and I really like that.
Well, and again, you know, she does cut her leg off, and she does start suctioning the bone marrow, and she just runs out of time before she collects the 3 ounces. And that's why I agree. It's like, it's kind of bullshit. It's like, she did everything she needed to do.
Just waiting on the machine to suck out the rest.
It's like, maybe you can make the argument for, okay, yes, she doesn't do it fast enough. But honestly, for Jigsaw, I think he should always build into his timer an extra minute padding for them to scream and say no and to try to pull on the device that they're in futilely, because everybody who's ever been in one of these traps in any of these movies, they waste the first minute of their time doing that.
I want to see
and it's
a
like,
Saw film where like a guy wakes up in a trap and immediately goes to the game.
Just like,
starts in on
it's
it.
Like he
just gets going, doesn't care.
It's like he just like opens his eyes, sees that like his hand is locked into some sort of horrible device, sees a machete by his other hand,
grabs it.
opens his eyes, just immediately grabs it and starts hacking his hand off. Like,
gets out 30 seconds to spare, and he's like, "Yeah, what's up?"
Doesn't
bro?
hear the rules,
Rocked it.
no hesitation, just like immediately rocks through it. I want a character who goes through their life prepared at all times to wake up in
Just
a Jigsaw
ready.
trap. That's a funny type of guy. That's a funny type of guy who lives
Doesn't fit in this movie.
Who lives their
Very
life
funny.
who lives their life ready at any moment to wake up in a Jigsaw trap.
Ready,
They're
bro.
prepared.
Jigsaw is ready for me, man.
He's out there, bro.
I would say
Yeah.
that the taxi guy was the closest we've gotten to that.
Kind of. He does his banging on the window and cursing, John Kramer, for a while first.
But he gets
does
out with a good amount of time to spare.
Does he? No, the
No,
bomb
he-
comes right off and he kicks it and it explodes.
Yeah, he
Kicks it,
gets
and
out
it's
at the
a second or two before it explodes.
Okay,
he gets away enough.
2
enough-
seconds isn't a lot of time.
enough for him to kick it across the room so he doesn't die in the explosion.
Yeah.
Which
but
is
it's
exactly
still-
enough time.
Yeah, it's still totally close. But yeah, she doesn't get out because the machine is too slow at sucking.
Not her fault.
The suck machine is too slow, not her fault.
She didn't know how long it would take. She didn't plan that out or strategize around that. She did the hard work. She cut her leg off.
And
And it's gruesome.
One thing that's interesting is like almost all of the traps in this movie have a 3-minute timer attached to them.
Yeah.
And all of them feel like they're shot in real time. Like, they feel like they're 3 minutes in reality.
I would be curious to time that. I would say they feel more like 5 minutes, but
To me, it's so frantic. It's kind of hard.
yeah,
for me to track.
it's hard to tell. I would be curious to know the actual timing.
It feels right for the film. Is what's most
Yeah,
important for the
yeah,
pacing.
yeah, it
And
does.
On that note, I do want to really get into the pacing of that sequence because I really felt like when the franticness of like the sequence ramps up so well. Like as the timer is ticking down, she gives her leg that first pull, like revving a lawnmower, and that bit of blood starts gushing, between your thighs, and like her scream is really good. I think that actress does an amazing job of showing like that deer in a headlights panic. You feel like she's going to go into shock any second. She's barely hanging on, and then she gives it that second rev, and she realizes how much she has to do to get through it, and then she just starts like pulling at her leg, and it's man, it was freaking me out. Like, if I'm being honest, I found that to be pretty intense. Like her just
It's
really like going at her own leg, and it's because like the physicality of it is so intense. Again, like that lawnmower pull, like up and down, faster to try and get through with the time as it's going down. There's so much more motion in it. It's so much more kinetic than so many of these other traps where they have to just like cut something out or do whatever. Like it's really anxiety inducing, that like frantic pull of the leg. And I loved it. I loved it for that. And it also worth noting too, like it starts out really poorly because when they first show the wire coming in, she doesn't know what it is, and she puts both hands on it and cuts her hands, making it so like she has to do all of the rest of the trap with her hands cut up. And that's cool. Like that's a really nice like addition to it. And again, all the blood oozing out everywhere looks great. Oh, and I think the best practical thing is very simple for this, but when she starts sucking the marrow out of the bone and we see it coming out, going in and through the tube and out to the other side and hitting the scale, it starts out kind of red and just wet, and then it gets goopier and red, and then the white from the marrow starts caking in there, and it's It's like,
Well, yeah, it's landing.
There's like a strainer there.
Yeah, it's landing on like a sieve, and so like all the blood is pouring through the sieve into like a jar underneath, but the marrow is too thick to go through that, so you've just got like that goopy white that's like pooling on there. Yeah, it's nasty. It's
really,
nasty as
really
it
well
should
made.
be. I mean, yeah, this movie's really full of that, like a good Saw movie should be.
Yeah.
We do not have the time to describe every kill in the amount of
that's the
detail
only
you
one I
just
really
did.
wanted to get that in depth with.
I do
just 'cause,
wanna-
again, it's perfect.
Yeah, there's still a number of things that we have to get into, so
Yeah, but that one,
breeze
like
through a
a
little
lot
bit.
of the other ones, feel like it's a race against the clock.
yes.
You know, and I think the 3 minutes helps.
Yeah, well, I like the repetition of the 3-minute time limit. Like that feels really good. It's like, yeah, pretty much everybody has like a 3-minute time limit. Like the pipe bombs were set on a 3-minute timer. The lady cutting her leg off was on a 3-minute timer. And then the next guy who has to he was the fake anesthesiologist. Has to like cut into his skull and remove like a piece of his brain.
Actually,
and, like,
perform brain surgery on himself.
perform brain
the thing that he was
surgery on
faking he could
himself. Yeah, and like I love too that like one of my favorite things about that one is like we don't really understand the contraption that he's in until he loses at the end. Yeah. It's like he's strapped in some kind of chair. We can see like some machinery like on either side of his head, but we don't know what it actually does until it's like he loses. And again, just timing is bad. Like he removes a piece of his brain and is like dissolving it, and like the little ticker thing is like going up, and it's like about to hit.
He did his job.
He did his part. But just like
he
just
got the brain
too
out.
slow.
He put it in the thing. Now he just has to wait.
But
and he doesn't know how long that's going to take. That's not on him.
And then like the timer gets down, and like you see like electric coils on either side of his head heat up, and then like the trap slams closed, and it's like an Aztec like death mask.
It's awesome.
With with electric coils on the inside, so it just like shocks his head.
Smoking through the eyes as his body's writhing around, and he's like getting burned to death.
Yeah, he's getting electrocuted to death. He's just got like this
very cool.
The Aztec death mask.
Yeah, so it's like obviously it's very silly that like he doesn't make it through it. Don't care. Great kill. Moving on. Absolute banger.
Well, one thing that I want to get into a little bit is I something I alluded to before, where the film like sort of starts to question like John's moral compass with like, and this is one of my actual like favorite things about how this film is written, and one of the more subtle things is sort of like Amanda's connection with Gabriella, because you know Amanda was put into her trap because she was an addict, and you know she was wasting her, or she was like risking her life by shooting up heroin, blah blah blah, whatever. And so Gabriella is also a drug addict, is also a heroin addict. So Amanda sees something of herself in Gabriella, and she wants Gabriella to get through this and advocates for her to John on multiple occasions. At one point, this is right as I was getting up to go to the bathroom, so I missed John's response, but she, so maybe y'all can fill me in. But she asks him, or she says to him, she's like, sometimes we become, like in our lives, we become subject to things outside of like our true like moral sense of self, that like external things, you know, react upon us, and that we fall prey to those. Talking about drugs, trying to like basically advocate on Gabriella's behalf is like, come on, like she doesn't really deserve to be here, right? Like she's part of the scam, but she's an addict, you know, like she's doing whatever she could for a quick buck. Like she lives in poverty. She's, you know, a slave to her addiction. She is innocent. And I liked that this feels like the first time in any of these movies where the film has actually asked itself that. And did he have a response to that? I was literally on my way out to the bathroom when that happened.
I feel in my memory it was something along the lines of like, Amanda, you know, that's why we have to do this. We have to give him a choice.
We have to give her a test.
The dark or whatever.
Well, it adds a bit of complexity to Amanda's character, especially considering her fate later, where she is setting unwinnable traps.
Yeah.
And John gets mad. It's because Amanda is really conflicted in this movie between wanting retribution for these people because they scam John, and seeing herself in a lot of these people, and there's part of her that wants to help them. Yeah. Whether it's seeing herself in Gabriella and wanting to just let her go, or, even as she's going through and, talking to people, she's kind of giving them, helpful tips, quote unquote.
She's preaching the gospel. She's reading from the book of Jigsaw, right? And it's I think I like Amanda in this. I think that she is one of... This movie adds a little bit more... depth.
Yeah.
And again, this is all within the context of the Saw franchise. I cannot reiterate that enough. There's a part of me that is like, depth, what are you fucking talking about? This is the bare minimum for a character like this. But again, within the context of the rest of the franchise,
compared to the rest of the series where she's a full-on one-dimensional character.
Right. Well, and the movie actually trying to confront John's sense of ethics, whether it's really as righteous as he says so or not. I don't think that it overall does that well or enough, but this is one of the... I'll give you credit for trying.
Well, also too,
good job, little guy. A for effort.
They're quick scenes.
Yeah.
And then we're back to it. But it is nice to see them give these actors that opportunity to show some chops beyond those two-dimensional characters that they've always played. John Kramer as well, like Tobin Bell gets opportunities to emote a lot throughout this movie, to show sympathy.
Yeah, they're really leaning on that shit heavy.
And deeper emotion and actual feel personally involved in a trap in a way that he hasn't been in the past, because he's always this omniscient villain. And part of what... Or
speaking from beyond the grave.
Or a puppet,
for well over half the franchise.
Yeah, being long dead and just, sounding through a cassette. But, no, but here, Tobin Bell gets to play this character, and still all within the confines of John Kramer.
This movie has...
understated villain. He still gets to emote within that range, and I think he did a great job. I think he did a great job for that.
I feel like this is... and again, take this with a grain...
Not the detriment of the movie.
Again, take this with a grain of salt, but I feel like in discussing this movie, this is the first time that just, in discussion... I have referred to him as John Kramer rather than Jigsaw, because this is the first time where John Kramer the man. And again, it's really not that deep. No. But this movie does more to attempt to humanize him than any of the other movies do. And no, he's still a fucking murderer. He's still not really a sympathetic character.
It's funny.
But the fact that this movie is actually trying, give him that A for effort. Give him that A for effort.
Sure. Well, next we have Gabriella's trap.
Yes. Well, one thing we have to mention before this, because it becomes pivotal to the ending, is before Gabriella's trap happens, and I think maybe even before the last guy, somebody shows up. And starts...
we're good. Sorry, I know we're running low on time, but to get ahead of ourselves, after the first person, the nurse, fake nurse, the prostitute, is killed, John Kramer and Amanda disappear for a little bit to figure out their next moves.
To go do their moral chit chat.
Yeah. At which point, the villainess, what's her name?
Dr. Peterson.
Yeah, Dr. Peterson. She grabs
phone rings.
Yeah, the phone rings in the middle of the room, that because all their stuff is just sat up there,
and no one can reach. No one can reach it.
So she goes over to the corpse of the prostitute.
Oh God, yeah.
Rips her open, pulls out all of her intestines and then uses them as a rope to pull in the cart, and they all have to like throw the intestines around and do that.
That was incredibly.
I love it. It shows how evil she is too.
Yeah,
and that like, oh my god, maybe Jigsaw has met his evil match,
an unrepentant monster.
Yeah, like an actual monster in here.
Yeah, like one of the only people I hesitate to say only because I don't remember for sure, but like one of the only people to be put in one of these traps, one of Jigsaw's traps, and not be reduced to like a blubbering infant begging for their life, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, she is like, she's cold. And I love that use of her just like disemboweling this corpse of somebody who was ostensibly a friend, right? To just like use her intestines as a rope was really good. But yeah, so she does get a hold of the phone through this, and
so because Gabriella says like, "Hey, we'll use our clothes as a rope to throw it over there." She's like, "Nah, I got a better idea.
I got 20,
way more evil. Don't worry.
23 feet or however long human intestines are. It's something 20 something. But yeah, so she gets the phone, tries to make a call, but then Amanda comes in and like stops her and breaks the phone, all this shit. But around the same time,
before we go on, I want to mention that the Dr. Peterson lady, she because her father was the guy who originally created this treatment,
yeah,
and she says I was going to call my father. He can actually help you.
Yeah, it's like, I've been scamming people for years, but my dad actually has a real treatment that works.
Yeah, and it seems like Amanda and John both actually think he's the real deal.
Yeah, but
which was kind of weird.
Which is, yeah, they take that at face value throughout, like, the rest of the movie. At one point, Amanda's like, what if we do let her call her dad? He can save you, John. And it's just like, why would you believe this woman? Like,
yeah.
Like, there's no, like, that like they didn't even do surgery on you. They showed you a video of like brain surgery 101.
That just felt like a weird loose end, but it seems like that's something that they could bring into a sequel, especially considering.
Doesn't really matter. But yeah, so what another thing that happens is somebody shows up at the factory, somebody shows up banging on the door, and they're like, oh my god, that's the guy, it's the guy that John had met, the other patient, early when he came into the clinic. And he had, that dude showed up with a gun, because he's also realized that he's been scammed, and is trying to get his money back. And, so they knock him out and chain him up and are like, we're going to make you part of the game. You have a chance to do something extraordinary with it. I'm not really sure, like, they don't really ever say, like, what his role in all of that is supposed to be. Because, spoiler, he has a different role in the twist.
Oh, the twist.
Oh, my God. But, yeah, so, he's there and he's watching all this happen. He's being like, oh my god, you sick fucks, you fucking pieces of shit. And it's like, then we get to Gabriella's punishment, which is another one of the more over the top ones, I think, where she's basically like hauled up into the rafters, like on a chain by her wrist and ankle.
One wrist and one ankle.
Wrist, one ankle, and they've rigged up the fucking like radiation machine up there. I don't proclaim to be an expert on this, but and maybe I'm totally wrong, but that machine seems like fucking medieval. I don't think that's how they treat cancer with radiation. Maybe I'm wrong. In this movie, they basically just treat it as a giant hair dryer.
Yeah, big heat blower.
Yeah. It's just a big
cartoon heat blower.
It's just a big cartoon blow dryer that is like blasting her in the face with radiation, and she has to take like a crowbar and like
a hammer. Like a hammer.
Okay, yeah. It's like some kind of blunt object. It's kind of long.
Yeah.
But she has to smash her wrist and her ankle enough so that they will come out of the manacles, and then she'll be free. My favorite part of that is like she starts trying to go for her wrist, And, like, the evil doctor lady is like, no, start with your ankle first. It'll swing you out of the path.
I was thinking the same thing. Like when she's going to grab the hammer, I'm like, oh my god, if she goes for her wrist first, she's gonna just go hit the concrete head.
Right?
First.
Yeah, I was saying it was just like, yeah, go for your ankle first. And so she does, and sure enough, like once that chain is released, like she swings over to the side, and she's not being blasted in the face by the radiation machine anymore. And this is when the film got the other biggest laugh out of me. It did. The first one was when he's in the park with like the happy children laughing and playing it, hard cuts to the drawing. That was the biggest laugh. And then the second biggest laugh is Gabriella dangling from her wrist now that she's broken her ankle, but at least she's out of the way of the giant blow dryer, the giant hair dryer. But then it just moves over. Yeah. No, it doesn't pivot. It's on a rail. It just moves over, so it's once again right back in front of her. It's like, of course, it's like, of course he would have. Like,
there's a great sense
of
comedic timing to it.
It was so funny, dude.
Yeah.
That shit made me laugh so hard.
And it's crazy too, because like the part thing, like she's already fucked if she just drops the hammer. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's game over. That's all that has to happen. So, but still, not good enough. The thing has to be, like, built on a mechanical pivoting device to pivot exactly where it would be under the contingency that she hits her ankle first.
Right.
Like, what?
Well, it's like, yeah, what if
Some
she
Wile E. Coyote
what if she had hit her wrist first and she had swung down upside down by her ankle? Would it have like gone down and then over? Like, the beautiful cancerous mind of John Kramer.
He's got it all figured out, man.
So yeah, she does manage to break out. Her face is all fucked up.
Yeah, it's like, oh cool, you have a new lease on life as a ghoul from Fallout.
As a ghoul from Fallout, and also like if it's radiation, okay, so she now at the very least has skin cancer. Like, I mean, we've seen
rife with leukemia.
We've all seen Chernobyl. Like if you're being blasted by radiation to the point that it's like blistering your skin, like you're days away from your organs failing. Like, she is not going to survive that. But it's like, oh, so she falls and she lands on the ground, she's unconscious, and John is like, tells Superman, is like, go drop her off at a hospital. But this is the moment where, oh my god, the other guy who showed up, he has somehow managed to free himself. Or no, they let him loose earlier because they're like, no guns, but you get to be a part of the game. But surprise, he just went and grabbed his gun. And
Surprise.
And is like, oh, you guys are fucked up, but I'm here to put a stop to this. And then reveals, the evil doctor lady, yeah, we're fucking. I was part of the scam all along.
I wasn't a scammy, I was a scammer.
I wasn't a scammy, I was a scammer. And so now, oh my god, what's this? Somebody has outsmarted the brilliant John Kramer. John Kramer is being put on the back foot. He's lost control of a situation. Oh my fucking god, we've never seen this before. So they're like, well, you're not gonna survive this, so we're gonna kill you with your own nasty final trap that you had prepared for the evil doctor lady.
Well, worse than that, she says, I don't want to just kill you. I want to punish you by making you watch an innocent die or something.
And it's just very conveniently at this moment, the young boy, the child of the groundskeeper, shows up because he likes to kick his soccer ball against the wall of the factory. And they had a moment.
Dead of night too.
Yeah.
What is he doing out there?
Well, no, shortly before that,
John quit. Baldo quit.
Yeah.
His life.
Cleveland, shortly before this, John looked at the clock and said, it's almost morning.
Oh, that's right. They had it all figured out. Okay, my bad.
So he's just out there.
The
kid's just out there at 5 a.m. kicking the soccer ball because,
ball
Ben
is
said,
life.
Ball is life. So he shows up just in time to be taken hostage. Well, we also earlier in the movie got a really nice little scene where John helped him fix the wheel of his bike. Because he's an engineer and he knows how to fix it. And he just had to put it in a clamp and straighten out the metal. And, you know, the little boy taught him the Spanish word for pull, which is like Chekhov's Espanol. It's like he learns this one very specific word in Spanish. I wonder if that's going to have any impact later in the movie. But so the evil doctor lady goes out and grabs the little boy and straps him and John into John's like final trap, which is inexplicably at this time built for 2 people, even though only the doctor lady was strapped into it before. Frankly, this is one of the I think this contraption, this device is one of the funniest in the history of the entire franchise.
Yeah.
Because it's essentially just a big seesaw. Like, each person is, like, pulled, like, prone against it by the chain on their neck. Face up. And they each have a lever next to their hand that if they push or pull it, it will tilt this big seesaw. And above them are 2 enormous like hamster water dispensers full of blood. Full of blood. That's what they are. They're like big jugs with like a little nozzle that comes off. It's like the exact same thing that like gerbils and hamsters drink out of, but just on like an industrial scale. And they're full of blood. So each person on the seesaw is basically being waterboarded by blood.
Oh, I love it because they have to
That's
say
one
it.
of my favorite lines in the movie.
Because the Saw franchise is so literal
Yeah.
that they have to point it out to us, and it's great. I again wouldn't cut it. I wish I could have written something so silly and
She's
stupid.
like bloodboarding the
It's
evil
good.
doctor.
It's like-
lady.
It's like waterboarding, but with blood.
It's blood boarding.
It's bloodboarding.
Amazing.
It's so funny. And so
Chef's
like
kiss.
And so it's like Jigsaw's been like freaking out because this little boy obviously getting pulled into it was, you know, Amanda's like, who the fuck is that? And he's like, he's a friend. Like it's like this,
Yeah, no pull, don't pull the lever.
and it's like he's like, yeah, and so yeah, he's telling him as they're being strapped in, he's telling, because he learned that one Spanish word, so he's telling him, don't pull. And you know, he's all emotionally torn up about this. We get lots of great close-ups where his eyes are all like watery and he's like sad. Is like, oh my god, Jigsaw has never been in the vulnerable position in any of these movies before, except when he died. But so he's like, he like pulls the lever back his way so that it tilts down, so he's the one being bloodboarded, so like the little boy is not getting it. But then the little boy like looks down and sees like this old man being bloodboarded, and he pulls the lever back to himself and it tilts back, and then the little boy is being bloodboarded, and then John and then John looks down and he sees him. He's like, no, don't pull it. And he pulls it back, and so it tilts back. And it's just like this fucking big industrial seesaw going back and forth between an elderly man and like an 8-year-old boy, like being waterboarded by big tanks full of blood. And it is just like, it is one of the most spectacularly hilarious set pieces that I've seen in any of these fucking movies.
Also, again, we're talking Gulf War, you know, shit, like coming out of that.
Oh, dude, we're charging straight into the War on Terror.
Yeah, War on Terror, like waterboarding in 2000, like in this, like, holy shit. Like,
So
the original
funny.
everyone's
movie
thinking about.
was like coming out of that and commenting on that in a lot
Yeah.
of ways. So
Yeah.
to reflect that so literally.
It's so funny. Well, and my favorite thing, too, is that, like, at some point after just this goes back and forth for a couple of minutes, the evil doctor lady and her nasty boyfriend partner just get sick, just get tired of watching this, and they're like, we're gonna go get the money. And so, like, they go back up into, like, Jigsaw's, like, office room where they were
of them
before.
being bored of watching that.
Yeah, they're just watching that go back. They literally both are just like, well, let's go get the money. And just like this keeps going on in the background. And they walk in there and it's like, oh, they see like the duffel bag that's full of money. And she reaches up and it does like the classic Saw, like low frame rate, slow motion for a second as she pulls the bag off of the shelf and reveals behind it a timer set to 10 minutes. It starts. Da-na-na, da-na-na, Hello Zep kicks in, the door slams shut, and then it's like, oh my god, and we start seeing like the cerebral flashbacks. It's like, that's why it was built for 2. Jigsaw, you thought you got a one-up on Jigsaw?
Nah.
You thought you fucking fool, you fucking buffoon. You think Jigsaw is ever fucking not fully in control of a scenario? You absolute fucking rube. You piece of shit idiot. And the funny thing about it too is that they make a point of saying that of the doctor lady having a line admitting that she knew he was the Jigsaw killer all along.
Yeah. Jig
like
fucking Saw.
Jig fucking Saw. From like even like as soon as she got the first email from him before they scammed, she knew he was the Jigsaw killer. So it's like, all of this is just like, oh, you fucking stupid, dumb bitch. You thought that you could really get one over on John Jigsaw Kramer? You thought fucking wrong. And so basically, their final test is the room starts filling up with like, I don't know, sarin gas or something. And
they show like a radioactive symbol.
well, they show biohazard tanks, and they're just like dumping dry ice into the room, and we see like the boyfriend, like it's like dissolving
making
his
him
skin.
a Fallout ghoul also.
I'm assuming it's supposed to be like sarin gas or something.
Well, sarin gas is like a nerve agent, so it frees you up, and you wouldn't be able to move.
Well,
but it
whatever
also
kind of gas it is, it's serendipity.
But it also like breaks down your soft tissue, so you start like bleeding and stuff.
Yeah.
So and in Saw 2, he's pumping sarin gas into the house.
That's true. Yeah.
He mentions it He mentions the Tokyo subway tax specifically in Saw 2. Anyway, so they realize that there's a head-sized hole but there's only one of them. So one of them can survive by sticking their head out through this hole. But they have to fight each other to the death. And so, of course, the evil doctor lady, who's a true sociopath, like, kills her shitty boyfriend and, sticks her head out until the gas stops and the door opens. She gets out.
It's so funny that...
She survives.
It's so funny that they...
Ready for Saw XX?
During that moment...
That's 10 movies away.
Yeah, that's Saw 20.
That's not how that works.
No. So the one after that is Saw XXX.
That's 20 movies away.
Nah. Dog, it's the Saw franchise.
That's the porn parody.
It's the Saw franchise. It's not supposed to make sense.
They've never skipped numbers before, you fucking...
It's time.
Dweeb.
It's time, man.
It's so funny to me that in that battle that the two are having, where she stabs the guy, they flash back to 5 minutes earlier.
Yes, to Amanda saying, like... to telling him she's gonna kill you too at some point, and John is like, she's right. At some point, she's gonna burn you. And as soon as he said that, I thought, I was like, oh, okay, so their trap is gonna be something where she has to, like, literally burn him. They didn't end up going quite that literal with it, unfortunately. I do love that they flash back to that. It's like, it just happened.
Yeah, they do that a couple
before.
times when Amanda is
that's
revealed.
that's classic Saw, though,
It's
again,
so
right?
funny to me, though.
Yeah.
Like
in case
Yeah, when Amanda's revealed, they do the flashback to the pig mask person.
literally the previous scene.
Just like literally one scene before.
It's like flashing back.
Except this time she pulls off her mask and you see it's a man. It's like we got
just
it.
in case, for any goldfish watching, just gotta flash back to that moment. In Saw fashion, too, something we haven't mentioned yet is I really like the speed ramping in this movie. We haven't touched on it yet. But they did some digital frame blending to make it look smoother and a little bit more modern, and I liked it.
I mean, stylistically, it's a return to form in color palette. You know, they used the industrial colors. They used the
the beginning film is all 2000s
the ugly
blue.
filters a lot.
Yeah.
You know, in this movie, they use speed ramping.
The funny thing about that is that most of those movies, you know, they use the heavy blue and green filters, but this one they do the classic Breaking Bad thing, where since they're in Mexico, they just do the heavy yellow filter.
Yeah, they're in Mexico.
As soon as it gets into Mexico, everything's yellow.
It's just everything is just like deeply yellow saturated.
It's great. It's fun. I do think that the blue at the beginning and the yellow, like, it looks better than it was done in the 2000s. Like, there's better color balancing.
Yeah.
With a more modern, like, hand.
I mean, shit looks better now. Generally, shit looks better.
Before, but I thought that was fun. Like,
I mean, it's still
looks not good. But
it's still like desaturated, like high contrast stuff. Like any of the stuff that's like, or especially like the early stuff, like when he's sitting in the cafe outside where he runs into the guy who like recommends the doctor to him, like. It's the classic Saw shit where outside is just like blown out. Just like everything behind him is just like white. It's like you just can't see shit. But to circle back, like I reject your Saw XX pun or joke, but you are correct that like there's literally no reason they left her alive other than to bring her back for Saw 11, which is certainly going to happen, right?
She's
like
gonna team up with her dad.
She even has like she got like a fucked up face a little bit from the gas, so you've got like a returning villain with a fucked up face. Like they're going for it, man. They're calling their shot.
Be an interesting pivot
because she was great.
Tobin Bell's
obviously Jigsaw is the villain of the whole series, but if you have a villain that's worse, then you almost make Jigsaw the quote-unquote hero.
It's going to be great. They're going to do 5 more of these. Tobin Bell's going to be 90 years old, and they're all going to be stuck within the time period between Saw 1 and Saw 3. They're going to cram in 5 or 6 movies worth of like some epic battle against this woman, like going all over the world that they're going to tell us this happened in between the events of Saw 2 and Saw 3.
I will say,
you.
On our previous Spiral episode, like we talked about what we would want out of a Saw film.
You pitched Saw 3000.
I pitched Saw 3000, and this movie, I think, makes that even more doable than before. Because now, after they win, John Kramer, Amanda walk out holding the young boy's hand.
Yeah.
And as they walk into the golden light of Mexico and the title comes in, we now have a very young character who can come back in the deep future as an adult. And like, you know, and not like the in the Spiral method, but who can set up an AI that still has John Kramer's voice. And that's what I want. I want to end with laser saw traps and jetpacks and silly shit like that.
It's never going to happen, but I do think there's a kernel of truth there in what you're saying, where I think they do very much leave themselves open to use this young boy character as another excuse to try to spin the franchise off in the present day as like another Jigsaw disciple. Be fucking stupid. Yeah, Saw Generations with a Z or whatever. Yeah, it would be fucking stupid, but also another thing worth noting is, like, as you said, yeah, they walk into the beautiful yellow light of Mexico, and we get the Saw 10 title. It's like the first Saw movie that doesn't end with a game over.
Yeah, and there's no theme at the very end. Usually that goes into the credits with someone slamming a door.
Yeah, the game over
that's
moment.
Pretty much
yeah,
every movie. Mm-hmm. So to have it just fade to white
as they walk in,
as they walk into the future of the Saw franchise with their octogenarian lead actor. We'll fucking see what happens. We do get a fucking Marvel movie style mid-credit sequence with the Hoffman reveal, which is fucking stupid because, like, other than that, like I told you I'd seen the articles where they're like, Hoffman's back. But before that in the movie, he talks to him on the phone like one time and he has like one line and I'm like, that was it. Like, that was the Hoffman. But they're like, no, we are going to give you your game over moment, where in the mid-credit sequence we see that John and dun Hoffman, he's there, have captured the guy who gave him the story in the first place, the guy who showed him his scar on his stomach from the surgery. It was like, it really works. And it's like, where's your scar? And he's strapped into some kind of...
Let's give him one.
He's strapped into some kind of device that looks like it's about to shred his guts.
It's like a mechanical hand with like blades like facing down over his belly.
But they
like,
just have him in the... And the funny part too is they have him in the bathroom from the first Saw. They have him strung up in there, and like they don't explain any rules or anything to him. They just turn the device on, and then the camera like flies into his belly button while like spinning him around.
Yeah.
And it's like
silly.
It's a fucking like goofy mid-credit sequence. Like, were they just gonna kill that guy?
Well,
like,
and in Saw like 4, they go back to that bathroom, and Adam from the first movie is like, rotting.
That's at the end of Saw 2.
Saw 2,
That's at the end of Saw 2. Yeah, they go back to the they show the bathroom a few times. But yeah, that's why I was making the joke earlier about fucking Lee Wanell just moldering in the bathroom while Jigsaw's traipsing around Mexico. Because, like, yeah, he's still just in there. Yeah. They just left him in there.
So this movie did decent enough at the box office.
Good.
And it was very well received critically.
I can see why.
This is a start of a new series. They'll milk it again. How many movies do you think it'll be before Cary Elwes comes back? Do you think he will come back?
I mean, yeah, if they're continuing this timeline starting from here, they have to have Cary Elwes back. He'll be back in the next one.
Probably.
I'm confident of that.
Let's do it.
I'll predict that confidently. Cary Elwes is back in the next one. And
let's see how his American accent is now.
Maybe a little bit better, but he's considerably fatter than he was back then.
Oh man,
See, that'll be funny, though.
Yeah, so they'll try to do the de-aged Cary Elwes. It'll be like the difference between the 5th season of Breaking Bad and El Camino with Jesse Plemons, where it's like they do the flashbacks at the same time, but he's like 50 pounds heavier.
One other thing I wanted to note too that I only just thought about that's kind of funny is that the young boy playing soccer in that movie is roughly the age that we're dating ourselves pretty poorly here, but that young boy is roughly the age that we were chronologically during that time.
Yeah,
when that came out, because I hate to say it, but like when 9/11 happened, I was in 3rd grade.
Yeah.
So it's fun.
Yeah, I was in 2nd grade.
Yeah. So like we're roughly the age of like that young boy there. I think that's kind of weird and funny.
And sure enough, I have been a disciple of John Kramer my entire life. It's like
Saw 2 was one of the first like modern horror movies I saw. I was in like 8th grade at camp and I watched it on an iPhone.
I mean, we grew up with these movies, and most of them suck. But like, I'm so just like, from having grown up with them, like I'm so fucking invested in these stupid fucking movies. Most of which are like sub 3-star movies, like the vast majority. And still, I've seen them all so many goddamn times. And here we are, and by God, this movie has shown me hope. Let's rate this, boys. Yeah. Again, this is a Saw movie. I can't praise it too highly, but by God, this is probably top 3 in the series. This is probably top 3
in 2023. This is probably top 3. Get it that high.
3.5 out of 5.
3.5.
3.5 out of 5.
That's fair.
Yeah, I'm gonna mirror that. This feels like a back to basics Saw movie. It's much simpler in its structure and less convoluted, and that works for what it is. I think a little bit of the campiness is gone because of that, but it's a lot more coherent. It's a lot more streamlined, and the kills are really gruesome and fun.
And it's self-reflective.
Weirdly, yeah.
It's weirdly self-reflective.
I think it's the best Saw movie since 2. honestly.
Agreed. Yeah.
I'm gonna give it a 3.5 as well.
Cliff?
Yeah, it's a strong 3.5. This movie's almost a 4 to me. I had such a great time.
It's just
but I'm
because we just got out of
Yeah,
it. No,
yeah,
3.5 is the right
3.5 I
score,
think
bro.
is
This
right
this
where it should
This
sit.
ain't a fucking 4-star movie. Come
Yeah,
on.
I know. It is great. It is.
It was fun.
It's a strong. You know what? I do think this movie's great though. At least again for
For a Saw movie, it is.
a Saw movie, it's fucking great. And
I'll give you.
It's a horror movie too.
I'll give you that.
I gotta say, those kills ruled. Those were great kills, and that's important in a horror film.
Yeah.
Like, I think the horror was good. And again, I was earnestly squeamish. The way I was squeamish the first time I saw, like, scenes from Hostel, or even to name a much, much better film, like Audition or something like that. Like, there was proper gore here that earnestly made my stomach turn.
Yeah.
And that is awesome and unexpected in a Saw film. As desensitized as I am to this
Well,
stuff, largely.
Yeah, well, that's a
2023. Good
that's
job. Well done.
a strong unanimous 3.5 out of 5 for Saw 10. Bizarrely, the absolute best case scenario for what this movie could have been.
Yeah.
The absolute best case scenario is it hit the peak for these movies, which is a strong 3.5 out of 5. So if you're a Saw person, I can actually recommend this one. Next week is good, but the evil times are coming. I beheld a red sunrise.
Oh no.
So
Oh man, please no.
Exorcist Believer is already out, and we're gonna get to it soon. It's been flopping its way around already, but considering that we've gone 6 years into the show without ever having talked about the original Exorcist, it felt in bad taste to talk about Exorcist Believer without at least having devoted an episode to the original. So that's what we're doing next week.
I think the new one will require that context.
I think it will, and I'm. What it's also going to do, I'm afraid, is it's going to make the flaws of the new one that much more apparent, having come so fresh from the original. Anyway, next week we can actually look forward to something nice before the evil times when we talk about one of the most important,
really good,
one of the most important horror films ever made, William Friedkin's classic, The Exorcist. So
rest in peace.
Don't miss that one. Rest in peace, one of the greatest haters of all time.
Love it, man.
All right, let's do a quick sponsor. Shit!
Predictions.
We have
Yeah,
predictions.
no sponsor, but predictions this week.
So Saw 10. So for Rotten Tomatoes, I predicted 13. Tease, you predicted 48. And Cleve, you predicted 79.
Ooh, I think Cleveland might actually.
Right
have
now,
this
it's
one.
sitting at an 80.
Yo!
Holy shit! Wow, you were
Which
really
is
close.
good.
You were
Pretty
optimistic. You went into
crazy.
this optimistic, and you were
Pretty
rewarded.
crazy high for a Saw movie,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah, I wanted it. I
Absolutely.
wanted it to be good. At that time,
I mean,
presently, I walked into that movie with pretty low expectations.
yeah, I went in expecting bad and was
I rolled that
rewarded.
one.
So
I
I'm
don't know why I rolled
I'm
that
happy to lose this one.
Yeah.
I'm happy for my cynicism to not be rewarded.
So for opening weekend, I predicted 34 million. Tease, you predicted 35. Cleve, you predicted 40. Right now, it is for opening weekend. It grossed 18.3 million.
Damn.
Okay.
So I got it just by
Yeah.
being the lowest.
Honestly,
Still-
we probably all
Still,
way overshot
I will say
that.
18 million, pretty good.
Respectable.
You know, it had a budget of 15 million, so you know.
So they're
making its
profitable
money
opening
back.
weekend. Yeah, good.
For collective rating, I said 1.8. TC said 2. Cleve, you said 4.
Hey.
Once again,
So Cleveland gets that one.
Cleveland's optimism is rewarded.
I think at that time,
I feel like that so rarely happens. I'm happy for you.
Thank you. I think I'm trying to remember back why, and I think at that point when we made our predictions, it was known that Tobin Bell was reprising the role.
Yeah.
And
We've known that for a while.
And I stand by it. It's not the puppet. It's Tobin Bell that is the face of this franchise.
Yeah, I don't think anybody was ever arguing against that.
Saw the Spiral does, and
Well, yeah, Spiral does, but that's why Spiral sucks.
Yeah.
That's why Spiral's a bad movie.
Yeah, it's got some good things, but yes.
Yeah, okay, but it's not a good movie.
Yeah, but man, fucking yeah, this did it.
Hell yeah.
On there.
Yeah. So taglines and additional comments. I said John Kramer is now a cyborg. Deal with it.
Man, I wish.
I also said with Kevin Gruder at the helm, this will be much worse than Spiral, but it'll also be a lot more fun. It was a lot more fun.
It was more fun, and it was, but also
better.
much
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. TC said at least Jigsaw is back, I guess. And you said
That's true.
it will be worse than the various ideas for Saw sequels we've pitched on the show. Which,
I mean,
you know
that's
what?
probably still true. That's
yeah.
probably still true, but that's
I like what they did.
yeah.
Yeah. And then, Cleve, you said robot/AI Tobin Bell.
If only.
You said my script is 100% accurate laser saw traps.
Damn it.
Damn.
We did not get any laser
Maybe
saw traps.
maybe someday.
Yeah.
Maybe the lasers will be back someday.
I
Okay.
think it's easier for them to do it now than ever.
Yeah. I really hope they don't do that. Anyway, let's do a super quick sponsor, and then wrap this.
All right,
episode up.
yeah, speedrun sponsor time. Here we go. The shelf speaks to us. What does it say? Oh my god, the horror. Oh god, what is this episode sponsored by? The nasty little man who lives in your mouth. Get him to stop saying those words. You're gonna get canceled. You need to cut that out. Silence that man. He's nasty. He's in your mouth. Get him out of there. He's saying things. He's saying mean things, and he's gonna get you canceled.
His name's Tobin Bell.
No!
That's what I'm doing in there.
but
He's
I
a good
like
Tell
Cafe.
Bell's He's a beautiful man. Oh my god.
Now, what's he doing in there? Get him out of your
Get
mouth.
out of there. Rip the little man out of your mouth.
All right.
You
Well,
gotta charge rent for that.
that'll do it for us this week. If you like the show, be sure to leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. You can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/podpeoplepod. Shout out to our honorary pod boys, Sam, Zach, Micah, and Mitchell. Y'all are the best. We do this for you. You can also follow us at letterboxd.com/podpeoplepod, where you'll find a list of all the films we've talked about on the show with our average ratings and links to those reviews. For my recommendation / shout out this week, I'm going to shout out one of Cleveland's coworkers, actually, who's a mutual friendly acquaintance of mine, Luke. He's in a grindcore project. Been around. They've been doing their shit for a hot minute. And they just put out a new record called Towering Failures. The band is Atomsk. And they're really good. And if you like grindcore, you want something nasty and grinding, then check it out. Support them on Bandcamp. Pick up a vinyl. I did.
Hell yeah.
So yeah, shout out Atomsk and their new album. Check it out.
For my shout out this week, I want to shout out the most saw-pilled game I've ever played, I think. It's a game called Deception 4. It is on PS3, PS4, and I think PS5 too. But essentially, it's a game where you're a woman possessed by a demon, and they want to grow in power by killing as many people as possible. And a bunch of people are sent into this mansion to stop you, and your job is to kill them. The thing is, you can't attack them at all. Instead, what you do is set elaborate saw-like traps.
Okay, so it's Bloons Tower Defense.
Sort of. It's real time, and, you run room to room as they chase you down, and you create traps. Check it out.
Oh, yeah.
I'm also going to shout out a Saw-related game by one of my friends and colleagues, Christopher Yabsley, who did The Fruit in the Fourth Dread collection. Just incredible game. He also did Pig Saw as well, which I think is very relevant. Wonderful game about the horrors of consumerism and pigs and saws. It's a tight game. You can get on itch and Steam now. You can get on Steam as well. I would highly recommend it.
All right, thanks for listening. We'll saw you next time.